Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at uenradio.com.
Stay that way because I like it like that.
Hey, welcome back to the Larry Yates Show. We have an exciting show for you today. Got a wonderful guest coming in here. So I want you to buckle up. We're gonna have a nice flight. We're gonna hit a little turbulence in the air, but hey, it's gonna be safe because you got the best pilot that you could ever have flying this machine. Anyway, hey, I want to thank you guys for supporting us once again. You know, I can never thank you enough. I'm glad to be back. I've been in and out. I want to thank Carolyn Wilkins for holding down the fort while we were gone, and I really thank you guys for sending me those how do we get here topics, and and the last one we did was on how do we get here in Armageddon. I got a lot of response from them, and thank you guys for that. And where are we right now? Okay, real quick, get a little caught up on the news here. Donald Trump, your president, just finished this summit. Kind of like he's pissing off all of the friends of the country and kind of embracing all of the thugs. And, I thought about that. And I'm like, why is this man not embracing our allies? And then all of the countries that are dictators and just cruel leaders. I mean, I just, in my mind, I've been watching the news. I'm trying to get people to say, well, help me understand why President Trump is so into these dictators. Number one, I think he wants to be a dictator. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. And he kind of gave it away with this Kim Jong-un thing. And I believe, before Mr. Trump became president, he was being turned down by every developed nation out there in bank loans. No one wanted him to bring Trump Tower to their country anymore. They didn't want Trump Tower in their city anymore because they didn't trust him, because he was just not paying any of his bills, filing bankruptcy after bankruptcy after bankruptcy, and just sucking all the money. And then you come to find out the only countries that is interested in wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and giving him money are the dictators. What do we have? Putin giving him money. China just dumped about $400 million into his pocket. And then he's talking to Kim Jong-un about putting hotels in North Korea. And, whoa, we don't see what's going on here, huh? We can't figure that one out, And the man is just dealing with people that he personally can get money from. He's just for sale. I'm not going to apologize for it. The man is for sale. But this is with all of the stuff that's going on in the country and this new policy. And we as African Americans in America, and especially in California, and in many other states, a few years back, we were really having a lot of friction with the Hispanic community. And there were really some terrible friction going on between the African American community and the Hispanic community. And African Americans felt that the Hispanic, the illegals or whatever you want to call it, was taking away jobs. And the fact of it is, they were taking away jobs, manufacturing jobs, and all of these labor jobs especially. And we were losing out on these jobs. There's no question about that. And we wanted something to be done about that. I used to be a welder. I had a welding company, and I lost all of my welding businesses behind some of this same activity. And I wanted something to be done with this politically, legally. But what this country is doing to the Hispanic community now is just ungodly. And I had said on this show maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and a lot of you thought I was, said, well, Larry, you're just full of conspiracy. But when this started with Reagan, believe it or not. When the big box stores started to come into play, Reagan put forth the Rex 84 bill. Don't take my word for it. Don't listen to nothing I say. But go look up the Rex 84 bill and go through that bill, and you will see that Reagan had the big box stores. They designed those stores as miniature concentration camps. And the way the parking lots are set up at these big box stores, if you see, you can't run a car in straight to one of these big box stores. They have all of these curvature to make sure that they can control the way the traffic is going in and out of these big box stores in the case of civil unrest. They built these stores to house people, and many of you told me I was out of my mind. Well, guess what? They're using Walmart to house Hispanic kids. Well, we wanted something politically done by the immigration. We wanted policies. But to see a policy now that they're ripping babies out of the mother's arms, they're putting these children in concentration camps called big box stores, and it's starting to grow all over this country, and we are turning our heads. We're not even seeing that these miniature concentration camps are being put together right here in America in 2018. And Donald Trump, the dictator, is the one that's pushing this. Well, these ICE is beating and killing and torturing men, women, and children of Mexican descent. And not only that, now they can't even run away from, look for asylum here, from brutality of the very gangs. And they're talking about MS-13 or whatever the name of the gang. You guys correct me on that. But this gang is in Mexico because we shipped them out of L.A. They were started right here in America. But no, we shipped them back there, and now they starting the same madness, and the people trying to get away from them, they can't even come here for asylum. This, people, is a sickness that is happening in this country. And with now the Republican Party, as you see more and more white supremacists, blatant, they're not even hiding it, have won their bid for position in the government. They won it. The Republicans are losing. Traditional Republicans are losing, and these right wing are winning the primaries. That's what I'm trying to say. The primaries, and we can't see what's happening here. You can't even see what's happening because we don't bear our head under our little pretty and shiny toys. As long as our bellies are full and we got our text messages available to us and our email available to us, we're sitting there and letting a people, our neighbors, be tortured and put in concentration camps, and children ripped out of their mother's hand. They did that to the Native Americans, people. And they did it to black people as slaves. They ripped our babies from our mothers and our fathers' arm and sold us. Didn't care about the pain and suffering. And now you see it happening in 2018. It's something wrong with this country, and we better get our acts together, because this can't last. Something is going to give here. And I'm going to use the rest. I wanted to just talk about that, my disappointment in that is that, and you've heard me say that I want an immigration bill, but I want humanity. I want it to be done with love. I want it to be done with respect and understanding. But I don't want to progress on the pain and suffering and the torture of others. Let me work for what let me work hard and get what I want. Let me step to the plate and do what I need to make a success for myself and my family. But I don't want to do it on the blood, sweat, and tears of children. It's just sickness, it's madness. I, as an African American man, I get in my car. I ain't got to worry about the police department. I ain't got to worry about looking in the rearview mirror. This administration is not going to do nothing about that. But even though that's hard for me, that's hard that I worry about my son, but at least we are fighting back. At least we have a fighting hand. What they're doing with these miniature concentration camps is just frightening to me. Where is it going to end? Because today they're not coming for you. The Asian community, they did it to you. Remember the Japanese? And we're seeing this again, and this should be very alarming. And I'm glad I thought to bring this up because today, my guest, I want to introduce you to a wonderful young lady that's doing wonderful work globally from South Africa, if I'm not mistaken. And so she's going to have to help me with her name. Well, I want to introduce to the show, welcome Eiran Swart.
That's right.
I got it.
Well,
Eiran Swart.
Yes.
Eiran, welcome to the show. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
you came here today because
Thank you.
one of the reasons I opened up with the humanity topic in mind,
Yes.
and is that you are doing work in that field, in that area. Tell us about the work you're doing.
Well, just to extend on what you said just now, Larry, I'm glad that you opened with that. Is the word that comes to mind is equity, and equity in a society is just and fairness for all to participate, to prosper, and to lead to their full potential. Correct?
Yes.
Now, Beacons of Light is the company that I started, and it was founded actually out of Up With Teens Academy out of South Africa. Now, I was born and bred in South Africa, and as you know, I grew up in the apartheid era. I was exposed to cultural discriminations and prejudices, and as a young girl, I was very sensitive to all of this, and I just knew it was not right. And I was a tennis player, and I landed up getting a scholarship to Wichita State University in Kansas. That's how I landed up in the States.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. And then I graduated at Washburn University, and I ran a international social club. This is where I got this idea with Up With Teens and Beacons of Light, because I was exposed to all different races, cultures, religions through different participants that took part in my club. So one night I'd have someone from Asuncion, Paraguay, and she would host us in her home as if we were guests in her home, so we could understand her cultural beliefs, so we could appreciate her belief systems, so that we could actually experience what it was like to be in South America, in Paraguay. And then the next week I'd have someone from China, the next week I'd have someone from Japan, the next week I'd have someone from Morocco, Australia, England. So being exposed to all these different cultures, I just, sat and thought one day and thought, how can we actually get people to appreciate and understand and accept other cultures, no matter what their belief system is? I said, well, the moral fiber that runs within us all is spirit, and we all have one spirit. The spirit is all the same, right?
It's so funny you say that, because one of the things when people ask me, Larry, why do I get along and how do I get along with people from just globally, because I've been so lucky I travel around the world.
Yes.
And I've done a lot of the same thing. But the things that I have always tried to do when I go into a country, I don't I try not to bring an American consciousness to anybody else's culture. What I try to do is learn the culture, the environment, and the religion that an individual grew up in. And by doing that, I add to learning a little bit about the food, the art, and the music.
Yes.
And that way you can get kind of a feel for the individual. Not try to fix an individual just because you met him or her,
Right.
but meet them where they are, and then try, for me, learn from them. Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Absolutely. I think it's so important. I just feel that if people would take the time to understand and appreciate a different culture, I think it's fabulous. Imagine if we didn't have different cultures. Imagine if we didn't have like Bollywood and the whole Indian array of color, or we had the Thailand array of color and the beauty, and I just think that our world is made up of all these beautiful cultures for us to appreciate, not to attack or to damn.
Right.
That's my belief, and that's my experience. I also, through my tennis and just through my life, I've been able to have the privilege of being introduced to different cultures. And for me, it's just this is food for thought. It is enriching to be able to share time with different cultures. We, in the old days, in the 1600s, when say Vasco da Gama came to the Cape of Good Hope in Cape Town, he was welcomed with dancing and tables of fruit, and because he brought spices and silks to the countries, because this was new.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why can't people embody that? Embody the differences. Just appreciate people for who they are.
Well, you grew up around apartheid. How
Right.
did that affect you?
Well, as a youth, it affected me in a lot of ways, because we had a nanny. You have a nanny in the home, and she was an African from Lesotho. We have 18 different cultures, all right? And my parents weren't at home often, and so she became like my caretaker. And I formed a great relationship with her, but there used to be systems in place in South Africa that prevented her from doing certain things. And I was young. I was like 6 or 7, and then, 8, 9, grew up, and then I left the country to go play tennis on circuit. But during that apartheid time, I just felt something was not right. And that was something for me. I think it started very young, and my father and I used to have conversations. And actually, my natural mother comes from a tribe in Cape Town that is an African tribe. We call them Coloureds. When the San Bushmen and the German Christian movement integrated in the Eastern Cape, my family's heritage is actually coloured. So I had coloured in me, although I'm blonde, blue-eyed. So I actually am of mixed race myself. And my father and I used to have long conversations, and I used to say to him, I just don't understand what's going on here, and it just doesn't feel right, And he educated me, and he said, what's going on in our environment doesn't necessarily have to take place in the home, because he was very liberal. So I was brought up very liberal.
Oh, okay.
So I was very, very fortunate from that standpoint.
Yeah, with the same situation here, one of the things that was very instrumental in African Americans overcoming slavery and Jim Crow is that there were a lot of liberal-minded white Americans.
Right.
And that had black people working in their homes.
Right.
And once they were in the home, many times they were treated very well.
Right.
But many of those white Americans, I'm sure in South Africa as well, many of them was afraid of the system themselves, because there was a stiff punishment for your family had they stepped outside.
Right. That's right. So it was, it was subtle, but there was enough families, I think, around my family that was very accepting of the black cultures, and I didn't see it. It wasn't in my face, because we kind of lived in a smokescreen. So I only used to see it in the home, because I was having my nanny would bring her kids over, and I'd ask why they can't come to school or come play with me, in the garden or whatever like that. And they were just like, well, that's just the way it is. But my dad allowed that in our garden. Do you know what I'm saying?
That is a very fascinating story. I once again, I really appreciate you sharing this. Because when I look at police brutality here in America now because of the cell phone,
Right.
and I was shocked that many of my white friends truly didn't know. They was in the smoky mirror, like you said.
Yes, smoke screen, yeah.
Smoke screen, a smoky glass, smoky
Right.
mirror.
Yeah.
And it was surprising to me, and to be honest with you, sometimes it's still hard for me to digest it, that you mean to tell me that all of the atrocities and the terrible thing that was going on in the culture, you really didn't know? And I thought some of my white friends was just kidding, but once they started to see it on cell phones and the whole bit,
Right.
many of them took action.
Right.
It spurred them to participate in the marches and donate money to the organizations and to get involved and made their vote count, and still today fighting against this level of brutality and oppression. And to hear you talk kind of the same and how you grew up is giving me a better understanding of how this things can happen right underneath your nose
without you knowing.
without you even knowing
Oh,
it.
when liberation really came through was when they had the technology for TV. However, it only came into South Africa in the late 70s. And then obviously other countries could see in, and then things started to shift and change. But there was always an underlying movement, because I had dated a guy that was working with the mines, and he worked underground with the ANC. Now, the ANC were revolutionaries with Mandela. The whole Madiba movement. So I used to but I was older. I'd come to the States and I'd come back. So I was older and I could understand politics a little bit more. And I was, I've always been flaming liberal. I mean, I used to go to the marches and go, we used to go, Mandla, where to? They'd see this, this white girl in the crowd. It's like, oh, crazy. But I was just part of what is, like I said to me, I believe in equity. A fair and just society is when all can participate, all can have the ability to prosper in order for them to reach the goal as one. Michael Jackson said it all. I mean, if we could just play that "We Are the World," that's big to me. But deep down, there's a word called fear. Now, I always spell fear is false evidence appearing real. That's fear.
Say that again. I love that.
Okay. False evidence appearing real.
I like that.
Okay. Now, what is a fear-based society? What is actually the source, the root of the problem when we get down to racial injustices, or when there's any kind of racial tension or prejudice? What is it? It's the fear of. But is that fear real? Do we question it? Is it true? Is it a belief perception, or is it actual?
Right.
If we can get more and more people, the kind of workshops I run with a few other facilitators, as we get down to holding that space and that power of what actually is, not what is conditioned to believe to be.
Well, that's a very powerful thing, because the one thing that I have learned in life is how powerful our belief systems is.
Absolutely.
And once whether it's an advertisement company or the government, or religion, once it taps into your belief system, and because the belief system kind of seeps into the fiber of your existence.
And if it's repetitive.
And it becomes visceral.
Listen to Trump. He always says, how many times over and over does he go, and I believe this will be. And
yes.
It comes almost like brainwashing.
Oh, it's not almost, it is.
It is, and it sinks into people's minds. And because people live in fear and they're being controlled by that fear, they just kind of live like they've got these blinkers on and off they go, because to question is hard work. To question, to shift, to change is hard work. The status quo is, oh, well, that's the way it is. But if you really want to make a difference, you've got to question.
You got to question.
That's very, very, very important. A lot of people say, what is the question? The question is, how can I, as part of my community, make a difference? It can be as small as helping a lady across the street that's not of your color or culture, you know, or organizing a little music event where you invite all. The thing is, we are the people. That if you stand together, we are the people. They will try and divide the people, and they fall. So do you see what's actually going on? There's a push and a pull going on the whole time that is very subtle, and it's below the radar, but it's there. And I'm sure people feel, if you intuitively as a being question the purity of who you are, the purity of consciousness, is that you are who you are, I am who I am, but we are.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, this is very true.
So if we are, then we make the difference. We supposedly elected who's in power, but however, the power is to the people. And you've got great icons like your Martin Luther King. You've got the lady on the bus, what was her name? Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks. There's a great movie called Behind the Movement,
Yes.
which everybody should see. Gandhi.
Yeah.
All these. Why does it take, a few people to make that difference? If everybody in their own way becomes a leader, well, I don't care whether you're from a mechanic to a CEO, but if everybody takes their power back from the system.
Exactly. I'm bringing in Michael Jackson too. One of
Yes.
his favorites is that man in the mirror.
Right.
You talk to the man in the mirror, and I often talk to, in some of my shows I've been doing with this How Do We Get Here on different topics, and oftentimes we as individuals are afraid to look within and really find the truth within ourselves.
Well, that's the excavation of your authentic self.
I like I like
Right?
that. I love that.
Yes.
And that's where, for me personally, this is where it starts. I talk about on this show all the time. If you want to fix what's going on in the world, fix yourself. Start with yourself. Go within and find that peace, find that harmony, find that balance within yourself. Because once you find balance within yourself, then you can go out in the world, and then you can, and your action would change. It's the whole thing of the butterfly flaps wings. You
Exactly,
feel it.
the ripple effect
The
of what
ripple
will
effect.
change.
But it
exactly.
starts with
Logarithms.
self.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like I always say, it's great to be educated, but you've got to take that knowledge and action it for it to become wisdom. Right? And not enough people you can sit there and learn and listen and all the rest of it. But and you can get mesmerized by it. But unless you actually action it, you're not going to shift the consciousness, or you're not going to shift any kind of domino effect into, your own society or your own environment. So I think it starts in the home. It starts with your
Yes.
sibling. It starts with the parents. Then it goes out into the community with the church and the schools. But I think once we're old enough to take responsibility for who we are, only we. It's no use saying, but they.
Yeah, pointing
Right?
the finger.
Which a lot of people do. It's I and we, at the end of the day, become a group of people with the same sentiments and the same perceptions that are actually thought about, as opposed to conditioned by what
Yeah,
the media
I-
want you to believe,
yes.
or what
I
you
love
read.
an old African philosophy that I am because you are.
Right.
Tell us, how did we get to this? I love this name, Beacon of Light.
Right. Well, my key is for everybody, in short, to be a beacon of light, to raise their amps to as bright as they possibly can be, shine their light and make the difference. That's what Beacon of Light is all about. So Beacons of Light, if you would like, I've got all the information. You can contact me on my phone number or my email address, which you can do. But Beacons of Light is made up of a panel of facilitators.
Give your email address out.
Okay, so it's Eiran, spelled EIRAN, SWART @yahoo.com. You can always text me on 424-343-3425.
Give that number again.
Okay, 343-3425. I have a panel of facilitators that are leadership and entrepreneurial. Then I have a youthful motivational.
Tell us about that panel.
Okay, so I have Gamal Palmer. Gamal Palmer grew up in Philadelphia. His parents were very much on social impact change, and he himself is. He started out in theater, and he started doing some theatrical productions in prison. And he wanted to make a difference after experiencing his interactions with some of the inmates. And he came out, and he's become really well known as an entrepreneurial leadership trainer in many areas in the US, and actually travels. Then I've got Corey Taylor, which is a youth. He's about 30, he works for the Fate Foundation, but he's also a motivational and fitness instructor. And he's one of the greatest, most passionate people that comes out of Georgia. He's also African American, and he really got out of a very struggling, poverty-stricken area to where he is now. Okay, and we basically join together and we tailor-make workshops. So depending on what is needed, we will then design a workshop.
How did you guys come together?
Well, actually, we started hiking together as part of the Fate Foundation. We go up to Runyon Canyon, and then we have hikes on a Saturday morning. And we just started, talking, and we were like-minded, came together, and we said, hey, you know what, with all three of us as leaders in our own right, let's create leaders that are holistic and want to make a difference. And then we form Beacons of Light. And that's how we are.
Give us a success story.
Okay, success story. I would say I've been working with the Fate Foundation, and they go into different countries. It's all about helping with water.
Now, Faith Foundation.
Fate. PH, 8.
Oh.
Fate Foundation. The Fate Foundation is always about helping clean water in very poverty-stricken areas in different countries, like going to Guatemala, Costa Rica, even I think they went to Vietnam or Ecuador, I'm not sure. And I worked with the group that were going to go and facilitate this workshop. So one of the successes was taking people out of their comfort zone, of their normal 9-to-5 jobs. They have their hot showers every morning and their hot baths at night, and running water is just like part of everyday life. And they gave up their comfort zone to go for 3 weeks or 4 weeks to Vietnam and help people with the water. We've also worked with the consulate, the South African consulate, and we've helped them just to understand and integrate better into the community here in Los Angeles. Our biggest thing is to help people to integrate, understand, shift their belief system into a belief system that they themselves have experienced, as opposed to a perception.
And it's amazing, going back to belief system again.
Right.
Well, I want to know a little bit about your tennis.
My tennis career.
Tell us just a little bit about that.
Okay, so when I was 7 years old, I started playing tennis, and my dad took me to a particular coach, and the coach said I have a lot of potential, and he took me on. And I was actually one of the first kids to leave school at 14, and I went on a tour of Europe, and I played the international circuit. I played for about 2 years on circuit.
Wow.
And then I came back to South Africa, and then I was chosen to go to Wichita State. They selected me. And I landed up to Wichita State University, played with them. I was number 3, number 1 double player, number 3 singles player. And then I was recruited by Topeka, which is Washburn University, and that's where I graduated with BA in communications there.
What did, how should I say it? What did you learn from tennis that is helping you on your journey today?
You know, if I look back on my journey, I would say it made me goal orientated. It gave me discipline. It made me persistent. I wish I would have done more meditation. So important, because I was a very hyperactive child. Those days they never used to say anything like ADD or ADHD. They just said she's a hyperactive.
She's a hyperactive
She's
child.
jumping off the walls, you know. I would have loved to have someone guide me in meditation, guide me in working with energy. I mean, I do energy healing work myself currently.
I want to talk about that. Talk about that in a minute. Okay, let's look at the little girl now. When this little 6 or 7 year old girl, and you looking at the world from whatever position, whether you call it bubble behind a shady glass. What was your dreams as a little girl?
As a little girl, I actually wanted to be a famous tennis player.
Oh,
I always
you knew what you wanted.
I knew exactly what I wanted. The funniest thing was my mother was walking me on one of the train platforms. We were taking a train to a place called Nelspruit, and there was a seer, like a sage person, that came up to my mother and patted me on the head. I was this little thing like 5 and said, "Oh, she's going to be famous." And they said, "Oh, she's going to be a famous tennis player. She's going to be a famous tennis player." So from then onwards, I was pushed in that direction. But I mean, I loved dance. I loved horse riding. I loved a lot of things. But my passion was I lived on a tennis court every day.
I got to tell you, I so appreciate you coming here today because I love your spirit. I love your energy. And we had some wonderful conversations over the phone. So when you left tennis, what was that next step that you
Well, you know, when I left tennis, I was actually in a stage where I didn't really know what I was going to do. So I was actually in America at the time, in Kansas, and my father said, "Why don't you just come back for like 6 months, come back to South Africa?" You know, I said, "I really don't know what I want to do with my communications degree. I have no idea." You know, I've got this degree thinking the world's my oyster, but I don't know what to do with it, you know. And I've stopped playing tennis. It's kind of like, you know, moving into another planet, another life, you know, because I was like, now what do I do with myself, you know? So I did. I went back to South Africa and I helped my father in his businesses. He was in the clothing industry. And then I was like, no, this isn't really for me. Then I started in marketing and advertising, you know, deadlines and all the rest of it.
Well, you are now, I think when we were talking in the green room, you said that you train therapists, holistic?
Now I do, yes. What I do is I do a lot of holistic therapies. So I work with people that can have immune disorders or psychological disorders, but holistically. So I do Reiki healing, I do access consciousness, I do body metamorphosis, I do integrated healing. And then with my workshops, I teach people. My key is teaching people to heal themselves. All I want to do is give you the tools. I've got lots of different techniques that, you know, this could maybe be another show, but if they go to YouTube, there are a couple of videos of me teaching how to release, let go, how to learn about control dramas in the workplace, how to actually, you know, understand people. Like, for instance, if you're in a workplace and there's constant let's say tension or disagreements, you have to understand the control dramas that we learn from childhood, which are aloof. You can be the interrogator, the victim, or the manipulator. So I teach people to understand other people's archetypes or behaviors that they learned to cope with when they were young. So this is how they integrate.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let's say, for instance, someone wants to take a day off, but they don't want to get that day taken off from their work, so they have to go to their boss. So they will go to their boss and they'll say, something's happened to one of their relatives and they have to, you know, get to another state very quickly. So they're playing the victim and the manipulator at the same time. Like, poor me.
Yes.
I really need this opportunity. So they're finding a coping mechanism to get to. Or say someone is jealous of someone. They can either interrogate them or manipulate them to act a certain way. And then if they want to cut them off, they'll play aloof. Like, it's what they're doing is they're cutting off the energy so you want to grab more energy. The whole thing is stealing energy or stealing power. That's what happens a lot of times in relationships, in organizations. People steal power from one another because of their own insecurities. And they've learned from very young how to get at what they want.
Well, let me ask, do you find here in America, I mean, I do, first let me speak for myself. I find here in America a little different than many countries I go in, but everybody here is stressed out.
Oh my gosh. No, listen, South Africa's quite follows the Western way. They are also very stressed out. But you know why, Larry? I think we've lost the connection. We've lost the essence
Don't get too far from the mic.
We've lost the connection to our source, Whoever your source is, I don't mind, but we've lost that connection. We're detached. We've become living outside of who we are. We've become materialistic, and we're looking for that X factor outside of ourselves when actually it exists within. So until we reconnect with our source and reconnect with the humanness of who we are, the human being, we are all human beings.
Yeah.
We all cut yourself and you've all got red blood. We're human
I
beings.
think you elaborate on it if you please. But I think one of the things that I see as a life coach and just as in general is that people find it very hard to find balance.
Yes.
It's just finding balance because pretty much anything in life is possible. Pretty much you're going to go through trials and tribulations. You're going to go through pain and suffering.
Of course,
but I think
part of life, yeah.
high anxiety is a lack of balance. Now, what that balance is, I don't know. And that's where I believe it comes down to the individual to seek that balance because once you find the balance within, we so tend to look for the healing to be outward, whether we want to go shopping.
Right,
What
it becomes addictive. It's
Yes,
drinking,
it's
shopping,
drinking, shopping.
retail shopping, or
Yes.
just, you know what it is? It's a distraction from actually facing what is.
So Beacon of Light help.
Well, what Beacons of Light, the organization, does is it helps you to excavate your authentic self.
Excavate your authentic self. I like that.
Okay, so get to the heart of who you are. You don't need to, it's like peeling the layers of the onion down to the core of who you are. And for each and every individual to find, it's not one of these broad spectrum, this is the answer, this is the recipe, because there's no one answer and there's no one recipe for a human being.
Yeah, there's
who's
no cookie
individual.
cutter there.
Absolutely not. We help you to find that X factor within yourself so that you can cope with and manage. Because yes, the anxiety, it's in the ether, it's in the air. Everybody's like, this is what I see the whole time. Like,
But what do you think they're running away from? This is my
from themselves.
I see people running. I know they're sitting still physically, but I see people.
Very
they're running.
few,
They're
yes,
running.
They're running from themselves.
And one of the things that has helped me in life is that I recognize that we're all dealing with some kind of pain and some trauma in our life.
Right.
And I think, I guess I'm kind of answering my question, but I really love for you to elaborate on it. But I think we all have had these traumas in our life.
Absolutely.
And we all have the pain, and we all have some hurt that we're gonna forever be dealing with. But it's seeking that balance between pain and pleasure without abusing either one, without becoming the victim or becoming a perpetrator. And that right there is something that most people don't realize, that they become victims, but oftentimes when we become victims, we also become perpetrators, and we'll deny that part.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly. Everybody has some kind of testimony that they've got to deal with, right? And I think the key in life is it's more than finding the balance. It's actually taking time out and understanding yourself. How many people actually understand themselves? I mean, you have these people, they fall in love, they get into relationships, so that half the time they don't even know themselves. And then they land up stealing energy from one another because they're trying to get something that they actually lack themselves, and they're mirroring it in the relationship.
You know, I'm moved because time is. I can't believe how quick the time is going on this already. And I have young people that I deal with, and sometimes mature, and that don't see the winner within them. That's one of the things that a lot of people don't.
The
see.
self-esteem, you mean that?
It could be the inner critic.
Right.
The doubt, or not even seeing some of their own success. You know, for example, I talk to young people at a certain age. I say, well, I haven't succeeded in anything. You haven't succeeded in anything. Well, when your mom and dad got together, there was over 100,000 sperm released to fight to get to your mom's egg,
and you won. That's
and when you
great.
got there, not only did you win that battle, you got there, you controlled her life, and through her, you controlled the environment around her. Where you through that, you brought in other people to support her because you won, and then you came into this world and you took your first breath and you was able to scream out to the universe that I'm here. That's a winner.
That's fantastic.
Until the kids, they had never heard anything like that.
Right.
So,
And they don't hear that in school.
No.
Confidence is probably the number one factor for any human being to succeed at what they do. And it's once again going back to belief. I believe in myself.
Yes.
And what I can believe and conceive, I can achieve. I
Yes.
always say that to people. So if you really, why would you not believe in who you are? You're a wonderful being of the universe. You're unique and you're individual. It's just the self-belief. And oftentimes it comes from the home of
Yes.
how they feel they were treated or the attention that they got. But at the end of the day, they must just remember that they're a loving child of the universe. Their parents were there to sure guide them and protect them.
I was talking to my partner today, and dealing with clients and coaching and so many children and adults. They're buzz phrases that affected us, that really poisoned our dream and belief in ourselves, that started very young, and phrases that was so obvious that our parents thought that they were protecting us. For example, a young kid in the South or the ghetto, or even a young kid in it didn't matter what household, says, I want to grow up and own my own manufacturing business. And if no one in the family has ever owned a manufacturing business, everybody in the family has just been just the day workers, regular workers, then they would tell the child, well, you're thinking too big. So,
Right.
But they're trying to keep the child from being disappointed in life.
Right. But,
But
they're
what-
actually stopping them.
But they're actually stopping them. And I use the example, is if I grew up and I said, I want a private jet as a kid, well, the whole community will look at me and say, well, you either think you're better than the rest of us, or you're dreaming too big. Why would you think like that? Well, if a Kennedy child say, I want a private jet, the mother or father say, well, the son, you or daughter, no, you may think of buying a fleet of them, but we already
Exactly.
you may want to buy a whole fleet. But it's the different in consciousness. It's different in how we bring our children up and how we
Absolutely.
were brought up.
Well, attitude as well. It's teaching your child without them becoming a so-called brat, that they have the potential to be anything that they really want to
Yeah.
do, and then encouraging that. But for me, it's about compassion. It's about caring. It's about teaching those values, those mores which has been lost. You're asking me what's wrong with society. The fabric of society is torn because it lacks in those values, the value
Yes,
system.
the value system.
So
yeah.
bringing back the value system is so important, and getting kids back interested in their own environment, in their own families, in their own culture.
And
is
helping
also
them
important.
understand their own self-worth,
Absolutely.
And like you're saying, we're basically saying the same thing. And see, here in America, I remember my generation was able to go in and break open a clock or a radio and look at it, and they would say, well, he's inquisitive, he's very curious. A kid break open a radio or a cell phone today, he's called violent.
Right.
And he might have to might have to see therapists
Right.
because we are teaching them that is a no-no now. So to explore all of these possibilities, so then a kid end up being 25 or 30 years old before he ever even breaks open a cell phone. Most of us have never broken over a cell phone and looked inside of it.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine that kind of
Yeah.
world where your kids can't use their curiosity, are not even encouraged to say, you like your cell phone? Yeah, well, there's an old one over there. Why don't you break it open and look at it?
Right.
We won't even do that anymore. We
Right.
don't want them to scrape their knees. We don't want them to get dirty.
Right.
In fact, going out playing in the dirt didn't mean you were dirty. It was just, go out and play.
Right.
But now a kid go out and play, the parents say, well, you're dirty.
That I know that I just cannot fathom.
Isn't that amazing?
Unbelievable, because that's where a kid really lets go. You're taking the innocence away by doing that. You're taking that freedom of
With
a
the-
kid already setting barriers.
And we're right at the end of, we have only, this has gone by so fast. Talk to us about what young people communicating text messages and stuff. What do you see us being able to reach kids because they're not communicating like we once did? I'm not saying it's bad or wrong or indifferent. I don't know where it's going, but do you think as a motivational speaker, they really acceptance to us speaking before them, hearing someone actually speak?
Well, you know what I think is very important is that you organize these workshops where you get kids to do exercises and activities. That's what we like to do, whether it's adults or kids. You actually get involved in physical exercise and activities, using music, using meditation, using different yoga and stretch techniques. It's getting people to move, to think.
I like that, getting people to move. So,
right.
you bring such energy to this whole process. Beacon of light. I love that.
Thank you.
You got me curious. I got you got to call on me to come so I can come and witness some of this or participate.
Sure,
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay, absolutely.
I'm going to hold you to
I'm
that.
going to invite you. Awesome.
Yes, I'm going to hold you
coming
to
up.
that.
Great.
But I really appreciate you coming. Jarvis, how much
And I'd
time
like
we
to thank
have
you
now?
for having me on your show.
We have 2 minutes. No, you have been wonderful, and just the first time we started communicating over the phone, your spirit was really, really wonderful.
Thank you.
And you're doing something. Mm-hmm. You're not just talking about it. And maybe your team can come on the show sometime.
Yes,
and
I'd
we
love
can
them.
just all chop
Yes.
it up. And I would love that.
Yes.
And anything that I can do or the show can do to participate, because I love what you're doing, reaching out cross culture, bridging the different cultures. And,
Yes.
And so what are you doing? What is something that you have coming up that you're participating in?
Well, I've got the South African consulate have a group that they're bringing over from South Africa, and I'm going to give them like a mini stress management and wellness session, and that's coming up in like 3 weeks' time. And then if people go to my website, it's beabeacon.weebly.com. They can book. They can just send me an email, and I can tailor-make workshops with my other. Basically, we all get together and say whether we're going to do a group workshop or we're individually going to take the workshop, depending on what the dynamics of that workshop is. So, I'm open at this stage to, organize. I'd love to get communities or corporations to get involved. In South Africa, they're very much into having active workshops. Whereas I found in the corporates here, I don't know if they don't have the time or they don't make the time, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of that.
That's another conversation or topic you and I are going to have because it is hard breaking through, and it's all about relationship with these corporations and stuff. It's all about relationships. And we'll talk more about that. And maybe we can share, put our heads together and see what we can come up with. And I learn from you, you learn from me.
That's fabulous.
And I think, I'm sorry to keep asking about the time, but I think we'll probably be at the end of the time. So as we close the show,
yes,
I love for my guests, and I would love for you to give us a few words of wisdom as we close the show.
Okay, so all I would like to leave everybody with today is that we're all a beacon of light. We just have to know how to raise our ampage so that we can all shine our light brightly and we can make a difference in our own way. And remember, as you look into the mirror and you look back at yourself, you're a shining beacon of light. You're an individual. You make up the communities. You make up the states, the countries, and we're all one human race, and let's always remember that.
I really thank you for that. I grew up in the South with the old Southern songs. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. yes, absolutely. But I really thank you for that, and for those of you that is watching the show and that will be watching, I certainly appreciate you giving us the time. But remember, the light that she's talking about, it's something that you were born with. Yes. And if it's not shining at its highest potential, there was so much around you to block your light. But guess what? You and the sun and the stars and the moon have the same particles that connect together, that you can shine as bright as you choose to. Just make up your mind to let your little light shine. Anyway, remember, a nation can rise no higher than it elevates its woman. Thank you. See you next week.